just by seeing the room. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a chilly Wednesday, April 13th, 2022, and this is the Metropolitan Council meeting, April 13th. Before we take the roll, I just want to again acknowledge that this virtual meeting means it's a little bit more challenging for public access, but I hope we'll have public joining us through our website or YouTube. And just to remind everyone that if there are members of the public who would like to make any comments or questions, please feel free to email us at public.info@metc.state.mn.us. We're going to respond promptly. And this fleeting state of emergency is going away. So we're looking forward to see everybody in person very soon. But in the meantime, we'll start our meeting with a roll call. Liz, please call the roll.
Barber.
Here.
Chambliss.
Here.
Cummings.
Here.
Fredson.
Here.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Lilligren. Lindstrom.
Here.
Musse. Pacheco.
Here.
Sterner. Vento.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Zurin.
Present.
And Chair Zelli.
I'm here. We have a quorum. Which brings us to the approval of the agenda. No vote is required unless a member would like to amend it. It was sent out in advance, not a very lengthy agenda today, but a few important business items and an update. Hearing no disagreement, I'll move on to the approval of the minutes from the meeting March 23rd, 2022. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Sterner. I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Lilligren seconds.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any discussion, corrections? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse. Pacheco.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Zurin.
Aye.
And Chair Zelli.
Aye, the minutes are approved. On to the public invitation part of the agenda. This is where we welcome public comment for those that have pre-registered to speak in this kind of virtual space. Just as a reminder, public can pre-register by emailing in advance. But I think, Liz, we do not have anybody pre-registered. Is that still correct?
That's correct.
All right. Well, thank you for that. On to our business item. And for that, we'll hear from Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is joint business item 2022-34, the Unified Budget Amendment. The 2021 carry forward budget, April 22nd, or I'm sorry, 2022 April budget amendment incorporates changes to the Regional Administration 2022 operating budget, the Community Development 2022 operating budget and capital budget, the Environmental Services 2022 operating budget, the MTS 2021 and 2022 operating budgets and capital budget, and the Metro Transit 2022 operating budget and capital budget. The budgets were reviewed and approved by the Transportation Committee on March 14th, the Community Development Committee on March 21st, the Environmental Services Committee on March 22nd, and the Management Committee on March 23rd. For the 2021 carry forward portion of this amendment, the unspent funds from the seven 2021 council equity initiatives are carried forward into regional administration. 2 projects for $1.6 million in community development and 2 technology projects for $370,000 in environmental services are brought forward into the 2022 budget. The amendment will also commit $1 million in 2021 year-end general fund reserves for insurance retention, which is a requirement of GASB Statement 54. In Metropolitan Transportation Services, the 2021 operating budget is amended to increase by $4.4 million for the pass-through of MVES funds that exceeded the forecasted amount to the suburban transit providers. The 2022 operating budget is amended in regional administration to incorporate the 8 2022 Thrive initiatives. 6 FTEs are added in the Office of Equal Opportunity, Human Resources, and Audit, and the increased allocations to each division are incorporated. In community development, a transfer of $2.0 million is made for the LHIA pass-through program for the one of the Thrive initiatives. In environmental services, the amendment recognizes $450,000 in new federal funding being passed through the state to support the ongoing testing of wastewater for the prevalence of COVID. In Metro Transit, the amendment recognizes an additional $6.9 million in federal pandemic relief funds for the light rail and reduces the expected local contribution by $3.5 million. It also recognizes an additional $2 million in federal pandemic relief funds for commuter rail and reduces the expected commitment of the local partners by $1.2 million. In Metropolitan Transportation Services, the amendment increases the 2022 budget by $16.8 million for the share of federal American Rescue Plan funds to be allocated to the suburban transit providers. The amendment moves $1.3 million of MVEST funds from the operating to the capital budget and replaces those dollars with $1.3 million in federal funds. In the capital budget, the amendment makes changes to 76 projects in Metro Transit and MTS. Most notably, it adds $153.8 million in county resources to the Metro Gold Line project. It also makes changes to 135 projects in the Parks capital budget. The specific changes are detailed in tables 9 and 11 of the attachments in the report we all received. So the motion, Mr. Chair, is that I would move that the Metropolitan Council authorizes the 2021 and 2022 unified budgets as amended and in accordance with the attached tables.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second to that motion?
Turner would second that.
Thank you. Any questions? I know that there was a lot of numbers and we've gotten the full packets to review, but any discussion, any questions at this point? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Pacheco,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Bento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Zurin,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye. That motion carried. On to the consent agenda. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Lindstrom.
Thank you. Second?
Second by Barber.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Liz, please call the roll.
Barber,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Pacheco,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Zurin,
Aye.
and Chair Zelli.
Aye. That motion has carried. And that brings us to the reports of the Standing Committee. And as you can see, all the committees have reports on the consent agenda, but no standalone reports. So we're right on to our information item. So it's my pleasure to welcome Christine Coonan, Senior Manager, Metro Mobility, to give us an update and background on Metro Mobility services. Welcome, Christine.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Zelli. I appreciate it. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great.
Hear you
Great.
perfectly.
I'm actually sitting in my office right now, and this is the first presentation I've made from my laptop in the office. So just wanted to check on that. Good afternoon, Chair Zelli, council members. Yes, my name is Christine Kennan. I am the Senior Manager of Metro Mobility, and it's my pleasure to be here today to talk about some of the service updates we're making at Metro Mobility. Next slide. So just as an overview, I always like to start presentations really describing what our program is as a reminder for those that aren't as familiar with our service. We are a shared ride public transportation service for certified riders who are unable to use the fixed route network due to a disability or a health condition. It is service that is guaranteed as a civil right under the ADA, and it's therefore regulated by the FTA, as well as under statutory requirements at the state level. Trips are provided for any purpose, and that's important. And it's also one of the most frequent questions I get about whether or not we're able to prioritize trips for purpose, and we're not, just like the regular route system. Next slide. This is a map of our service area, updated just in February of this year, and I'll get to that in a little bit here, but I'm sure it's the map that's familiar to you. It is a reflection of our 7-county service area, as well as what is that grayish blue blob in the middle that is the footprint that is prescribed for us under the ADA, our federally mandated ADA service area. Next slide. So going into a bit of detail for you to kind of describe the difference between our ADA area and our Metro Mobility service area, or our non-ADA area. The ADA area has rules prescribed and defined under the ADA. There's a service criteria that's strict for what constitutes complimentary paratransit. The area in general is just defined within 3/4 of a mile of all-day local fixed route service. Trips that begin and end in the zone are guaranteed and cannot be placed on standby. The times are negotiated at the time the customer places the call or requests the trips, and the service is guaranteed. There are no capacity constraints allowed under the ADA. All trips must be served. The Metro Mobility service area, the larger area surrounding that, is defined by the state statute that it's to serve the 7-county transit taxing district as it was established by the legislature in 2006. And then additionally, in 2019, a special session included the city of Lakeville to our service area. Trips outside the ADA area or this non-ADA area are placed on standby. So a customer calls a request for a trip, but the request is placed on standby, and then the customer gets a call back from our providers to let them know if the ride will be served. That service is subject to subject to capacity constraints, meaning if we don't have enough resources, we are able to deny those trips. Next slide. Going even further into the FTA criteria, like I said, it is the service area is drawn within a corridor 3/4 of a mile on each side and at the end of each fixed route bus and rail line. The service is also required to small areas that are surrounded by these corridors within that core service area. So there's no real pockets in between the lines so much. These requirements are not applicable to commuter bus, commuter rail, or intercity rail systems. But basically, the ADA service area rule would not be applicable just because a commuter route that traveled a couple times in the morning, a couple times in the afternoon existed. It's really the all-day regular route service. Hours and days of service are also prescribed within the ADA. It says the service must be available throughout the same hours and days as the fixed route service. And our Metro Mobility service hours by community, we have 94 communities that we serve. Those are set to match the FTA criteria for span of service, unless it's not applicable. For example, there are some routes in the regular route network that just run Monday through Friday. They don't run Saturday or Sunday, but we just set Metro Mobility service hours anyway on Saturday, Sunday for a standard of like 8 to 4, 8 to 4:30, something like that. And so we are serving the community still, we're just not matching the exact hours that a regular route runs because it's not mandated under the ADA. And then it's important to note that part of the ADA regulation speaks to capacity constraints. Basically, it says that agencies are not allowed to limit the availability of service to any eligible individual through any operational pattern or practice for those trips that are falling within the ADA map zone. What that means is we have to monitor our resources closely and making sure we're properly allocating our resources so that we are not putting undue constraint on the ADA area. Those rides basically become our priority in lean times. So how we do that, we have on-time performance thresholds, pickup performance, appointment time, standards, how long a customer can be on board standards, how long a customer can be on hold on our phone line standards. All of those performance metrics indicate whether or not we have any capacity constraints in our system, and so we monitor for that. We monitor that on a day-to-day basis, as well as we think about that when we plan our service delivery. Next slide. So that brings me to why I'm here today, informing you of some of the decisions that we've needed to make in order to appropriately react to adjustments that have been made in the fixed route system in the last couple of years. What you're looking at here is a map of our ADA area as it exists today. This is kind of just a different representation of what I showed you on the second slide. What you see here is an outline of our ADA area with some blue areas that indicate service area expansions that we implemented in February of 2022. Basically, we redrew our ADA service area to include to match some route extensions that were made, some span of service extensions that were made in the regular route system. For example, Woodbury had a route extension that triggered the ADA criteria, and then also MVTA, significantly, MVTA had a route that they put in place last year, delivering regular service to Mystic Lake Casino, and that also triggers the FTA ADA service criteria. So now that area, the Mystic Lake Casino, is part of our ADA map. The red areas indicate those service areas that no longer are meeting FTA ADA criteria. So there were either a route elimination, for example, that red area in Minnetonka, that was a route that was eliminated in 2019 by Metro Transit, went through the public hearing process, public comment, and I think the council approved the route elimination in May of 2019. You know, and those, and it also indicates those cuts that still remain since that time. So nothing in red there is a result of temporary reductions or COVID-related impacts. You know, we all know that Metro Transit has you know, taken subsequent service reductions, and we have not matched those. We're not interested in matching temporary reductions, but it would be important for us to be matching permanent reductions. And so we would plan to implement or a change to our ADA map based on what's been reflected in the regular route system since 2019. It's important to note when we're talking about this red area that we're not talking about removing Metro Mobility service. We are simply talking about changing the ADA footprint. So those ride requests still come in, would still get delivered, but they'd be subject to capacity constraints like I discussed previously. Next slide. Anytime we're talking about changing Metro Mobility service, we think it's really important to look at who it's impacting. We're fortunate in that we know exactly who we're serving and where they're going. And so what we did is we looked at, you know, we wanted to look at the impact of redrawing our ADA map based on those 2019 era cuts to the regular route system. And when I talk about this slide, I should say there's two charts here. The top chart indicates those trips that are made on demand. So a customer's calling up, requesting a trip, it's counted in that chart. In the second chart is our standing order service. So those are people who have the regular same ride scheduled every day, maybe Monday through Friday or a few days a week, but they're going to the same place at the same time. And so they don't call up every day, they just have a subscription or a standing order. The numbers in this chart reflect those people and the number of trips who would be affected by their trip going from an ADA area to the non-ADA area. So basically it's the people that would be in the red map area. And the last column indicates the percentage of total trips that would be impacted from that map shift. So it's really a small percentage of our service area. And we do intend that we would grandparent in all the standing orders for those customers that have standing orders traveling anywhere to or from a red area. So basically, while they would be in a non-ADA map area, we would still honor their standing orders, so we wouldn't ask them to be calling every day. Next slide. In addition to changes to our ADA map and how that's drawn, there are some service hour adjustments and implications to our span of service based on reductions that have been in place since December of 2019. We did just undergo an expansion. I indicated we had a blue area of our map. We also have undergone some span of service expansions in February. But this slide shows the communities that would have cut hours based on regular route service cuts that pre-existed COVID. You'll note all of the hours are overnight hours, and it's just a small percentage of the communities in our region. We do serve 94 cities. Next slide. And again, we wanted to take a look at who we'd be impacting if we, making these changes. We'll have a very small set of customers that would be impacted by the origin and destination of their trips no longer being within the service hours. These are counts from all of 2019. We wanted to look at a full ridership year and understand who's traveling of those times of nights in those communities typically, how many trips does it constitute, and what percentage of that. You'll see it's really quite a small percentage of our system that we're cutting. Most people are not riding during these hours. Next slide. So as we talk about implementing these changes, it's important to us that we are giving our customers as much notice as possible. We discussed this with our Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee last week. I think it was well received. We had some good questions. We do have a 6-month notice requirement to inform affected customers of service changes. So we plan that we will communicate this to our customers, our public, beginning next month. We plan a website alert where we'll link to a separate web page that defines the changes, includes new maps and service hours, and also recreates what we have on our website now, which is a lookup tool where a person can put in an origin address, a destination address, and find out if their trip is within the ADA area or the non-ADA. And so we would replicate that so someone could forecast the future. We plan a delivery newsletter to our subscriber list. We plan targeted letters via US mail to any affected rider who have taken trips in the past year in those affected areas or during those affected hours. We plan a newsletter story in the fall, and then we would plan to implement these changes in November. And with that, that's the information I have for you, and I'm ready to stand for questions.
Thanks, Christine. And just to clarify, because you've said it, but any of these reductions are not considering the reductions associated with COVID. All those were viewed as temporary.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. We think it's appropriate to let that settle and become permanent with a public hearing and all of that that's associated with permanent changes before Metro Mobility would react as complementary paratransit. We really took care to examine just those 2019 era cuts. And in fact, we were prepared to examine those, and then COVID hit. And of course, we had to shelve everything. But now here we are, 2021. Metro Transit, like I said, made a number of expansions. And, December 2021 service change for Metro Transit included Orange Line and other improvements. And we've taken those on and already implemented those expansions. But now when we're looking at needing to appropriately match the federal mandate for our ADA area, that we're being very careful with the reasoning as well as the advance notice.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Christine, thanks so much for bringing this to us. As you know all too well, Metro Mobility is something that we get lots of constituent questions about. So really appreciate getting some information ahead of time as we're making some of these changes. One comment is I really appreciate that we're going to honor the standing orders for the areas that are going from ADA to non-ADA. Again, that's a huge benefit to our constituents and the users of Metro Mobility. I have one question about some of the outreach efforts related to the impact for the ADA service hours adjustments. It's a small number of people, so are we going to do any additional sort of direct contact besides just letters to some of those people ahead of this? Because it is a small number, but those are some people who may not have other options, or we could go through other options they might be able to identify.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. And Councilmember Barber, I think that's a great question. And I alluded to earlier, it's really wonderful that we know who our customers are and we know where they're riding. And it really does give us a chance to reach out, talk about the change. It's a small number of people. So talk about the change, maybe, give options for different times they could ride, really help them understand the reason. it really gives us that opportunity. And so, yes, we would plan to do so. I think that letter would be that formal announcement, but that we would also have follow up with some outreach.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Christine? Trying to look. Yes, Councilmember Bento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Christine, I just wanted to do a shout out of thanks to you and the entire Metro Mobility team. The first issue that I was faced with from a resident in my district was a Metro Mobility issue. It was someone who needed Metro Mobility assistance short-term due to a fall on the ice.
Mhm.
And since then, I've had probably one of the most, not the most, but one of the most frequent issues I get is related to Metro Mobility. And I'm always really impressed with the assistance that I get and the riders get from the Metro Mobility staff. I feel as though folks are really attended to and, dealt with in a timely and respectful manner. And I just really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Bento, I think that's wonderful comment. I appreciate it. I will definitely pass it on to my team. I know they'll want to hear it as well. I appreciate that. I agree with you on their work.
Anyone else? But Christine, thank you, not just for your presentation, but as you've heard already, we really are appreciative of the efforts of the staff of really difficult work and doing these changes in a thoughtful way. And as representatives of constituents, it's right. We do hear when things are not going well, but it's really great to hear more often than not it is going well and how valuable and essential that service has been. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks again for having me. Bye-bye.
we'll have you back.
Okay.
Thanks. Well, that takes us to our substance of our meeting today. Not a very long meeting. I just want to actually be more specific that this actually is our last virtual council meeting. I know we have a committee of the whole coming up, but I can't believe it. In 2 weeks, April 27th, we will have a in-person council meeting. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in person. And we're blowing the dust off the council chambers and cleaning the windows, and they'll be ready for us. Also, just so everybody knows that the staff is coming back into the offices, and then many will have kind of existing worked out teleworking arrangements. So it's probably is going to be kind of a hybrid. But I think that there's already some excitement, apprehension, and we just have to be thoughtful as we kind of go in and I say probably underscore the need for grace for how we kind of go through transitions. When we went into COVID, it was really amazing how quickly we adapted, mostly because we had to. Now we're coming back, and it's going to feel a little unnatural, but it's also going to feel pretty exciting. And I love that Christine's presentation came from her office, and and I think you'll start seeing that more and more. And so, with that, are there any other reports or anything that any council member would like to report? And when we're in person, I'm going to do eyeball to eyeball, going to kind of get people giving reports. So it's just warning.